Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz guitar legend Ed Cherry. He grew up in New Haven, Connecticut. He started out on the clarinet and had dreams of playing professional baseball. When that wasn't going to be a reality, he picked up the guitar and his path led him to New York City. And in 1978, he hooked up with legendary jazz cat Dizzy Gillespie, forging a long-playing relationship full of great music. He has a new 2016 CD out called Soul Tree, and it's a phenomenal listen, and it's doing great on the charts. He's spent a lot of time as a studio musician, and he loves jazz. So get to know Ed and dig this interview, my friends.
Hey, how you doing?
How are you, sir?
All right, all right.
Hey, thank you for taking some time out today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
So I'm going to just dive right in here. I know you have a brand new album, Soul Tree, that's out, but I want to get an idea of what's been going on with you lately.
Well, I've been fairly busy doing gigs around town here in New York with my own trio, organizing a couple of workshops in Europe. I've been doing some tours in Poland, of all places. There's a big jazz scene in Poland, actually. I've been going over there 2 or 3 times a year, for a week or two at a time. And I just got back from there in, when was it, February. And I'm going again in October. Supposed to be going to Italy in June for a workshop, a little jazz camp near Genoa. And then again in August, going to France, south of France. There's another workshop that I'm doing, things like that. So they kind of put, and then in the downtime, I do little gigs here and there in New York, a couple of students, not a bunch of students, but, I do that too.
Let me ask you about Soul Tree. It's a great album. Talk to me a little bit about it, and it's charting well. Tell me a little bit about the afterglow of this album, how you feel about it, and what went into this album.
It wasn't a big grand plan. I mean, the guys that are on the CD, on the recording, Kyle Kohler and Anwar Marshall, they're in my band. So we've been doing gigs here in New York, here and there. And when the time came around for Positone wanting a recording, we just went in and played what we played on a gig, We kind of refined some of it, but basically it's just how we play live, So it was fairly easy. The choice of tunes, I mean, those are the tunes that are in our book now, Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I kind of take a recording process from how Dizzy used to do it. Dizzy never went in to record new material. He always he tried to record his band that has been playing music, for a while before he would bring the band in to record it,
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I work,
Yeah.
I don't really go in with new tunes,
Sure.
or tunes that we've barely played, I just kind of go in and play what we've been playing for a while, and it makes it more relaxed.
So I'm going to get back to the beginning of your life. Were you born and raised in New Haven, Connecticut?
Yes.
Okay. Talk to me a little bit about your childhood there and how you fell in love, not only with music, but with jazz.
Well, my dad was a jazz fan, is a jazz fan. My dad's still around. He's 89 and still working. He's an architect, and he's still working and listening to music. He still comes out and sees me play whenever I'm close enough in the area. But he's a jazz fan, and he would play the records in the house. I still have some of his 78s. He would play, let's see, who were his favorites? Charlie Parker, Barry Harris. He liked Wardell Gray, James Moody. So I would hear this music in the house, when I was a little kid,
Yeah.
Grant Green was a favorite. Kenny Burrell. Wes, he listened to a little bit, but Grant Green and Kenny Burrell were his favorite guitar players. When I was in about 3rd grade, I started playing clarinet in the school band because I knew I liked music, and I wasn't really sure, what I wanted to do with any of that, but the clarinet was available to me, so I took it up in third grade and played that for about 2 or 3 years. And then went from that to the guitar, clarinet, and baseball. I was a big baseball guy, Little League. I played Little League. I was into sports, and so I played clarinet for 2 or 3 years, and then baseball, and then baseball fell by the wayside when I started playing the guitar, like around 7th grade, 8th grade. I started just playing, taking lessons for about a year, the half-hour Saturday morning guitar lessons at the local music store, And then once I started learning some basic chords, I started playing with my friends in the neighborhood, the popular R&B tunes of the day and James Brown and all that kind of stuff. And just continued to play on through high school, blah, 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 blues, funk, everything, playing in bands, top 40 bands. And then when I was about 17, 18, I started listening to my dad's record collection and going out to hear music, George Benson, Larry Coryell, Joe Pass, whenever they would come through New Haven, or in the area, I would go see them, and Jackie McLean, saw Jackie McLean, he lived in Hartford, which is not too far from New Haven. I would go see him play. My parents knew him and his wife, Dolly. I had been coming in and out of New York since about 75, 74. I started taking Saturday classes at a program called Jazzmobile, which was like a almost free music program here in Harlem. And some of the great master musicians at that time were teaching there. Jimmy Heath and Ted Dunbar and Bob Nellums, who played with Mingus. All these guys, they were teachers there. So I would go in every Saturday and take those lessons and meet the other musicians and who, my age, and then I went to see Dizzy Gillespie, and he had this great guitarist, Rodney Jones, who was like 20 at the time. Became friends with Rodney, and he turned me on to another teacher, blah, 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 meet different cats. So I decided to move to New York in 1978. So I've been in New York since 1978. And then shortly after I moved to New York, I got the gig with Dizzy through Rodney Jones, who had been in Dizzy's band for about 3 years or so. He decided to leave the group and recommended me. And that's how I got the gig with Dizzy.
Right on. There's a couple things I want to point out there in your lineage. First of all, what was your first guitar like?
It was a nylon string, cheap classical guitar, and I played that for about a year, and, my parents saw that I was serious about it because I was playing it all the time, so they got me a cheap electric guitar. And that's when I started playing with my friends. I told you I played with my friends in the neighborhood, so I had a little amp and electric guitar, and that was it.
So after you realized baseball wasn't going to work out, you picked up the guitar. Did you know that music was going to be a part of the career path that you were going to take in your life?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew right away that that's all I wanted to do. My parents wanted me to go to music school, to be to get the degree and maybe become a teacher or something. But I didn't do that. I mean, I was going to go to Berkeley, I had all the paperwork in and everything. This is 1972. And I had friends that were already there. I was in and out of there, but I didn't stay and ended up going on the road, and the rest is history.
Right on.
So.
The one thing that I'm always amazed about increasingly as I delve into the history of jazz, especially on the East Coast, is how instrumental the Jazzmobile was, how much good those guys did to lend their talents and their time. Yeah.
It was great. It was great, and, I was in Ted's class, And Ted was a taskmaster. You know, he had his books and everything that he had written, and everybody had to buy a book and study out of his books. And it was difficult, you know, but it was great sitting there, you know, like about 15 or 20 of us sitting around him. He's just playing, you know. We all knew that Ted was one of the master players on the New York scene, and we were sitting right in front of him. So, and I eventually taught there myself for about 3 years, but years later, you know, I think my last class was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. But I had started teaching there for about 2 or 3 years. I think they've shut down now. I don't think Jazzmobile is happening anymore.
Let me ask you a question. Is you come into New York City, you come into kind of the mecca of jazz, and you hook up with someone like Dizzy, and all I've ever heard is how infectiously happy and beautiful the soul that Dizzy had was. That had to be an incredible learning curve to come into New York and hook up with Dizzy.
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, Dizzy was a positive guy. I mean, he was funny, and, you know, he would tell jokes and this and that, but he was very serious about the music, you know. As long as everybody in the band was on time, you know, don't be late to the gig, play what he wanted behind him, and that was it, you know. Just play what he wanted. You know, you could pretty much improvise and play any kind of way you wanted on your solo, but in the scheme of playing the arrangement, the way he was hearing it, and how he wanted the accompaniment behind him when he was playing a melody or soloing, he was very serious about that, you know. But other than that, he was a great guy, great band leader, never a problem. You know, I was lucky, you know, because I hear horror stories about other guys in certain bands who, you know, band leaders don't pay them, or they disappear, or they're yelling at him on stage. You know, Dizzy never did any of that. It was all business.
Yeah.
And very normal.
Yeah.
You know.
That's cool, man. One thing I do want to ask you, too, you play with a lot of other luminaries in the world of jazz, like John Patton, Elliott Blewett, Henry Threadgill. What was it like to be around forces like that, kind of akin to Dizzy? What do you learn from people like that?
Just watching how they work, you know. Like, it was obvious that Henry had thoroughly studied, you know, classical music and used it in his own writing and arranging. Music was very difficult. Again, Henry was a great guy, you know, but very serious about the music. A lot of rehearsals. Yeah, Henry was great. John Patton was, you know, like a fun-loving guy, beautiful guy, very much into the blues, which was like right up my alley, you know, swinging hard. He lived near me when I was living in New Jersey. He lived not far from my house, so I would go, you know, to his house, and we'd jam and rehearse, this and that, and you know, he'd tell Grant Green stories because they played together for a lot of years, you know. So, you know, I'd hear all the Grant Green stories and traveling with Lou Donaldson and all that stuff. So, you know, yeah, that was great too. John Patton, you know, just a natural talent, you know. I don't think he went to school or anything, you know, like that. You know, I think Henry got his musical education in the Army, in school, elementary school in Chicago. But John was like a natural talent, just a natural genius, you know.
Yeah.
So all those guys. The thread here is that all those guys, they were geniuses. They were or are geniuses in their own way, you know, and watching them work and how they put together stuff, you know, put together the music, and very clear about what they wanted, you know, whether there was written music or not, you know, they were hearing it all in their head, and they were able to explain it. Dizzy was great like that. Dizzy didn't like to write stuff down, but if he did, he could.
Yeah.
No problem, But he would rather just talk to you, play it on the piano, and then it was up to you to pick it up,
So let me ask you this. In your career, you've been a pretty prolific studio musician. What's the greatest thing about being a studio musician? What do you like the best about it?
The challenge, going in and not really knowing what's going to happen. I mean, you sort of have an idea of the style of music before you go, but what's going to be asked of you, and making it happen. Trying to make it happen, trying to make the whole thing sound good. Meeting new people, Sometimes you do a session and there's people you may know but never have played with, Like I just did a session recently with a vocalist named Holly Cole, great singer from Canada. Larry Goldings was the musical director. I've met Larry, but we've never played together, and it was great. We spent like 2-3 days together on this session, and got to see him work. And great guy, funny, Ben Street was on bass. I think I played with Ben once, but we hang in different circles, so it was good to hang with him for a couple of days. So it's nice, meeting cats that maybe you've never played with, making this new music happen, try to make it happen instantly. It's the challenge of the thing.
So let me ask you about the teachers, the instructors that you've had in your life. Whose advice reverberates in your head to this day? Who gave you advice that you really have remembered?
Well, besides Dizzy, the one other person that I have to mention, his name was Bruce Johnson. Probably no one's ever heard of him, but many musicians in New York knew Bruce. Bruce was another genius musician, guitarist, bassist, artist, did all kinds of woodworking. He's just like an all-around guy. But he was a genius guitar player, and he's one of the reasons that I started coming in and out of New York before I actually moved there. I would take lessons from him, hang out with him for the day, and he was one of the ones that would introduce me to some of the local musicians that would come by his house to talk or jam, or I really got to know some of the musicians in New York before I moved here through Bruce, and he's and I was a kid, I was like 18, 19, and he's telling me the importance of, finding the right musicians who are going to support what you do, playing with a metronome, practicing with a metronome, I'd never really done that before, I was still very green, and simple things like that, presenting yourself well, when you go out, things like that, just like grooming me, so to speak, I guess, for the jazz scene in New York. Bruce Johnson, great guitar player. He played, he didn't record a lot. He played guitar on a couple of recordings with Enrico Rava, Chico Hamilton, Errol Parker's pianist from France who moved to New York in the early 70s. A very strange composer, different. Bruce, played on a couple of recordings with him. And that's about it, I think,
Yeah. Let me ask you, what is your philosophy as a teacher?
My philosophy, philosophy is learn as many tunes as you can, Tin Pan Alley, jazz tunes, jazz composers, playing in time and tempo. I really stress that, because if you're playing a lot of stuff and you're not playing in a good tempo, you fall in and out of time, nobody's going to want to play with you. So it doesn't matter how you play or what, what you know. If you can't play in time, meaning practicing with a metronome, playing with people, I try to stress trying to find people who are better than you to play with. Not just being the best guy in the band, but try to be the worst guy in the band, when you're coming up. And that's one of the quickest ways to learn. And getting gigs, playing in front of people, having 2 sets worth of music, finding your musicians and playing, going out and playing in front of people. I invite them to come to my gigs and sit in, and then I can really hear them and give them a critique, But yeah, that's, just playing in front of people and getting your time together and, being relaxed when you play and not necessarily have to play a lot of notes to make good music.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned a lot of albums you listened to. You played with what the world would consider a lot of jazz heroes. But for you, who would you consider your jazz heroes?
Well, let's see. There are many jazz heroes. Okay. Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie. I like Barry Harris. Grant Green, Kenny Burrell, John Patton, Jimmy Smith, Jackie McLean, Dexter Gordon, Roy Haynes, Wes Montgomery, many more, But most of those are the guys that my dad used to listen to, and I went back and listened to them, and those are the cats. Louis Armstrong. Louis is always refreshing to listen to. After listening to all this really convoluted stuff, Train and all that stuff, then you go back and you listen to a nice Louis Armstrong record from like the early 50s or the 40s or the late 30s. That's some great stuff,
Yeah.
Just pure melody, pure tone, joy,
Let me ask you this. You dedicated your life to jazz. So answer me this. Why do you love jazz?
It's the immediacy of the walking on a tightrope, like coming up with instant melodies with your improvisations, meeting the musicians who push you to get to another level in your zone, pushing you to another zone, an outer body experience. I love that, that outer body experience when everything is right and the musicians are supporting and you're not thinking about what you're playing, you're just playing and it all comes out feeling right. I love that feeling.
What is one of the nicest things that either a fellow musician or a fan has ever said to you about your music?
Well, not so much musicians, but the people who are non-musicians who come up to you after a concert or something, and I really love what you do, and I bought your CD, or I heard you before, and I came back to hear you again, and these are people, who just work 9 to 5. They're out with their wives or their date or whatever. They don't play. They don't have any judgments about how you play. They just feel good when they hear you. Those are the best compliments.
Everyone has a version of who you are. Your fans, your family, your friends, your business associates. But who do you think you are?
Well, who do I think I am? I don't know. I'm just a guy out here trying to make some music and make people happy and earn a living at the same time. And it can sometimes be difficult. It can be difficult on the family. Sometimes you don't see your friends for a long time because you're traveling a lot. But it's all worth it in the end. I'm just a regular guy. I like to watch basketball. I like I said, I was a sports guy. I used to play baseball and tennis. Still like watching that, like old movies. I like to watch film noir and go to a new movie every now and then, although the ticket prices now are crazy here in New York anyway. It's like $25 to go see a movie. Come on.
Wow.
Man. Yeah, but so I have my little things that I do away from music. I also like to get away from the guitar for a while, and it kind of re-energizes me. Go on vacations, to the Caribbean without the guitar, or I like to go to Vermont, out in the cornfields and look at the cows and enjoy the quiet. I enjoy quiet places. That's what I like to do.
This is my final question for you. You're far from being done, but you've made a huge mark in the world of jazz. When the world sits back in the proverbial easy chair and they flip back the pages of jazz history, the annals, and they come across your name, how do you want to be remembered?
That guitar player that made me feel good when he played some blues, and how and his time with Dizzy, and what a great band that was, and trying to help other young musicians, and giving credit where credit is due. I hope people say that about me. That I was helpful and honest and a nice guy. I wasn't a jerk.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, I have to say, you meet people, you have these stars in your head, oh yeah, so and so, I really love the way he plays, blah blah blah, and then you meet them, and it's like, ugh, they're like a drag, they're a drag to talk to, or they look down their nose at you or whatever, and it's not a nice situation, and you walk away thinking, gee, I'll never buy that guy's record again, or I'll never listen to his music again just because of the way he is, But hopefully, I'm not like that. Hopefully, people will think that, yeah, Ed was a nice guy, and played decent guitar. So.
That's a perfect way to wrap everything up. Ed, thank you for opening up with me today and giving me your story. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks for the call.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Ed for his warmth, his music, and his tales. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store, or visit theneonjazz.blogspot.com for all things Neon Jazz. Until next time, enjoy the music, my friends.
Neon Jazz.